I am the founder and executive director of Haggadot.com, and we're excited to share this new webinar with you to help you get into the spirit for Passover. And Rebecca Missel, our director of partnerships, is going to lead it. So welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon, I guess. I'm here in New Jersey. Let's see. Great. Can everybody thumbs up? We can see the presentation. Yes? Okay, great. So welcome to this whole idea of liberating our home spaces today. As Eileen said, I am Rebecca Missel. I am the Director of Partnerships and Operations at Haggadot.com. And Haggadot is a platform that invites every Jew, regardless of their background, to find a place for themselves in the Passover story so that they may create more meaningful, personal, and connective Seders. When you come to our site, we are not going to do a site tour today. So this is a sort of great preview of what it looks like when you're sharing your Haggadah on Haggadot.com. If you are interested in learning more about the site, we are happy to share some of our past webinars with you that will give a lot more depth to the website itself. Haggadot.com is a project of custom and craft, Jewish rituals, and we're a design lab for the Jewish community, experimenting with technology, media, and video to imagine new formats for engaging with ancient traditions. We are a 501c3, and we really thrive and survive on the donations of folks like you. Our individual users. We're a lot like public radio, and that's really what enables us to do work like this, which is sort of this more engaging and spiritual content for today. What are we doing today? I'm talking about chametz and liberation and how that plays into our spaces. So we'll talk a little bit about what actually chametz is, both physical and spiritual chametz. And we will talk about what it means to remove that physical kind of chametz. We'll talk about spiritual chametz, and then I'll share a ritual for liberating our spaces that you can experiment with at home in the coming days as we're getting down into the last little bit before Passover. We'll have a little time for any brainstorming.
And Delaware's governor and attorney general. Critics argue that the bill will be ignored by criminals and will simply.
Great. We'll have a little time to do some brainstorming around rituals that you may want to try at home, and then we'll have time for questions. And this is a good housekeeping moment. Just if you are joining, just to please mute. We'll have time for folks to unmute and ask questions and be on video later on. So what is chametz? In the Torah, chametz is described as any food product where individual little grains of wheat, rye, barley, oats, and spelt have been in contact with water for more than 18 minutes. So the rule is basically, if it's been there for more than 18 minutes, don't eat it during Passover. Don't eat it, don't own it, don't have anything to do with it. Matzah, if you're wondering, okay, but matzah is wheat, and there's also spelt matzah nowadays. How the heck do they do that? Well, matzah is specifically made to be baked in less than 18 minutes. And at 18 minutes mark, first of all, 18, super Jewish kind of a number, but just so happens that it is also the time that it takes the grains of these types of products, of these grains, to start to germinate, to leaven. So any kind of wheat, the rabbis decided, or if the wheat has been in contact with water for more than 18 minutes, germination and leavening can begin. So we got to get that matzah mixed and baked in less than 18. In Exodus, it says that for 7 days there shall be no leavened products found in your homes, because for whoever eats chametz, that person shall be cut off from the congregation. We've said this before in some of our rule-breaking webinars. Haggadot.com is not about cutting anybody off from the congregation, and you can eat however best suits you during Passover, and these are sort of just, the rules that are laid out in the Torah. So there's a ritual called bedikat chametz, right? To search for the chametz. And this is really what it means to remove the physical chametz that we have in our tradition. So our tradition sort of teaches under the light of the full moon, right? So most Jewish holidays happen in the middle of the month when the moon is full. It's the night before Passover, which this would all be happening next Friday night, the 26th. So you're going to move through the house. There's no lights on. And you're going to look around with a candle, and you got a candle in one hand and a feather to act as sort of like a broom, and a wooden spoon or a bowl as like to collect crumbs of chametz that you're finding, sort of like a dustbin. Many people, because this is cutting it close to the holiday, and if there are folks who actually do a deep cleaning of all chametz for Passover, intentionally hide up to 10 pieces of chametz. 10 is not a significant number here, but it's just what's become tradition. And it basically functions like a game of hide and seek around the house. I learned in the process of researching this webinar that a lot of Sephardi families, instead of the spoon part, use a knife. But I don't have a ton of wooden bowls and spoons in my house, but you can use these. Then after you've gathered all of the chametz that you find, you put it all in a paper bag, and you make sure that you clean, remove, destroy, and renounce all chametz. And the morning after, so this would now be, we're now taken into this year, it would be, although I'm guessing it's off a day because of Shabbat, on that morning before the first Seder, you take it all to be burned. In some cities that have a large Jewish population, and before COVID, they would have a big communal bonfire when everybody would bring that chametz with them to be destroyed. And again, I'm just going to ask folks to make sure that they're muted, please. Great. So I kind of wondered, is the secular custom of spring cleaning, did it come from Passover? Did Passover borrow this from another custom? Or does it just feel good for us to like clean up our houses this time of year as the seasons are changing and we're finally able to have the windows open? That's my theory, at least. So releasing spiritual chametz also, it has a place in our tradition, right? It's not just some like new idea that we came up with, right? There's a lot of places where spiritual chametz is discussed. And we tend to think of that spiritual chametz as like our ego, our baggage, our worst tendencies, right? Like our worst beliefs about ourselves or about other people, this sense of like a puffiness of the self, right? And it's really just like with bread, just like how too much yeast, or if your sourdough starter goes for too long, it can overprove, and you can imagine your best Paul Hollywood here. Too much ego, too much spiritual chametz also has a potential to overprove. I liked this sort of framing from Rabbi Arthur Waskow, who's part of the renewal movement, that spiritual chametz is a swollen sourness in our lives. There's also a belief that chametz can live in our hearts, and that as long as there's chametz in our homes, so physical chametz in our homes, or spiritual chametz in our homes and in our relationships, there's Egypt in our heart, right? Like there's this sense of slavery, of bondage in our hearts. I would love if folks want to put in the chat, we're not a huge group today. If you want to put in the chat sort of a line about, what the Egypt is in your heart, if there's something that you're wanting to cleanse away at this point, as we sort of we're in the 10-day countdown to Passover. So if there's something you're thinking about cleansing and releasing from yourselves this Passover, I think it's great to sort of get a sense from folks there. Grief. I think grief is a big one. A lot of us are holding this year. Yeah. Defensiveness. Unhelpful and unhealthy thoughts. These are great. Overwhelm. I know this can feel a little like Yom Kippur. I think what I like for this is that Passover is sort of halfway back to go around to Yom Kippur. trying to do too much. In some ways, I think COVID has helped us do less, and I think it's made us do more. Anxiety, great. So I'm going to invite folks just to sort of keep these in mind, keep these sort of Egypts in mind as we kind of go through the rest of the day. And, you know, again, like I know it can feel a little bit like Yom Kippur. That is sort of where we are in the calendar, is this sort of halfway back around, you know, and Passover is also its own new year. Technically, it's like the months have to do with the new year, and also it's a harvest holiday, so it kind of helps reset the calendar. I wanted first just to share a couple of quicker rituals that you may want to explore as you are thinking about your own cleansing of your more like of your spiritual chametz, and then we'll talk about the spaces kind of piece of it. Excuse me. So one is this idea of storytelling, right? Passover is dinner theater of the highest level. It is a theatrical evening. So you can use the storytelling part of Passover to tell your personal story with different sensory elements. You can also, in these days now leading up to Passover, use this time. I have like this vision of somebody making a TikTok about sort of like what it means to like spiritually cleanse themselves before Passover. If you do that, please let us know. I think also, you know, it can be writing, it can be a music, making a playlist, making any kind of art, right? Like drawing and art is such a powerful way of processing our feelings, and especially, you know, at a moment in time, you know, where we are a year after COVID began, and needing to really think about what are the rituals that we need in our lives. Another piece that I think is great to check out, and we can put this in, Eileen, do we want to put this in the chat maybe? This is a Passover meditation guide that was put together by Allison Lecter, who's an incredible meditation guide, and with illustrations by Jessica Tamar Deutsch, and that's this illustration here, and there's a couple more of hers throughout this presentation. And it's really designed to help you release that inner Pharaoh, right? Like similarly, you know, what is your Egypt? Who is your Pharaoh, right? If you are, you know, especially those of us who have anxiety or self-doubt or self-limiting beliefs, that Pharaoh is there, right? It's a very RuPaul's Drag Race reference to be, you know, your inner saboteur also is how he frames it. I think there's a lot of ways to think of that voice that limits us. And these are really great meditations, both videos and also some writing meditation to help us think about how we can use this time, this really sacred time, to release those voices and to kind of make ourselves whole as we go into this holiday. So thinking about physical spaces, the first thing that I thought of was this quote from the Talmud that says, change your space, change your luck, right? Mashana Mako, Mashana Mazel is like the sort of Yiddishy version of that aphorism. I will say Haggadah.com cannot guarantee a change in your luck, right? Like just a disclaimer, but I wanted to invite folks to try this ritual for space liberation anyway, and it can only help your luck. So first is to think about how you're changing your perspective. I know that, you know, changing our spaces right now, especially, some of us may still be on lockdown, some of us may be still stuck in the house in some way or another. And I think that physically changing space may be difficult, but changing your perspective is a lot easier, right? So either that chair that you never sit in, right, that sort of sits off to the side, sit there, sit in a different position on your couch, at your dining room table, in your office, right? So whatever it is, or take that chair if it's not too heavy and move it into another room. Again, this is just all about changing perspective and sort of shifting. You want to shift your energy by shifting your perspective, and these are some ways to do it. The next step is think about writing down what you want to release on some scraps of paper. Notebook paper, anything is great. You can, journal about it and take that page then out of your journal. And some reflection questions, so partly inspired by the meditation guide, right? Like, who are our pharaohs? Who are your pharaohs, right? Who is it? Is it a person? Is it an idea? What is it that's, sort of rattling around in there? What is your narrow space that you're wanting to leave behind? Right? Like, what, some of the things that we talked about in the chat, that grief, I think there's such a specific grief that was shared, the loss of a parent, but there's a collective grief that we're all carrying with us from this last year too, right? It's seeing, these numbers that feel so massive all the time. And that is really something, we may want to release the heaviness of, right? We don't want to forget the people who are behind those numbers, but maybe we want to release how it's weighing us down, right? Or how it's puffing us up and making us, bringing in those self-limiting beliefs, bringing in those negative ideas and thoughts. And so just to write those all down, which I think is unto itself such a powerful exercise. And the next, and this is again borrowed directly from the idea of Bidikat Chametz, is scattering those scraps of paper around your house. And you can do this part of it anytime between now and next Saturday night, which is the start of Passover, or really Friday night, I would say, because that's when we do
you do the best you can. What else? What can we do, Jenny? It's...
Okay, can folks please mute? Thank you so much. So you'll take those scraps, you'll scatter them around the house, and I don't want to say forget about them, but maybe sort of let them be, kind of let them seep into those spaces, into those corners, behind the bookshelf, under the houseplant, wherever you're going to put those. And then the night before Passover, it'll be a full moon. Take yourself, turn off the lights in your house and open the windows, and gather that spoon and feather and candle and go through your house looking for those scraps of paper, looking for those wherever you put them. And then what you can do is gather them in a fire safe bowl. If you, like me, I live in an apartment, so the only safe place to burn something would be out on the fire escape. If you are in a place like Los Angeles or like Phoenix that has a very high burn concern right now, I would maybe think of another way of doing this exercise. You could, instead of writing it on notebook paper, you could write them on coffee filters and put them in water and let them sort of dissolve that way. So I just want to make sure that we're being safe and that we are not causing any major catastrophes by using fire. But our tradition is to use fire. So if it is safe for you to do so, it's an invitation to do that. And I think that there's something really powerful about fire, right? That it's our tradition used that for this ritual as opposed to a water ritual, which we use, with mikvah and other things, because there's something deeply satisfying about the destruction in a way, right? Destruction makes space for rebirth. I actually come from Arizona, and they often in the forests in Arizona, which we do have forests in Arizona, the fire department will do what they call a controlled burn. And that controlled burn is to prevent a forest fire, right? So we're burning a little thing to keep us from burning everything down. And you'll often see that not long after those controlled burns, you'll start to see shoots of trees and plants come back because they now have the space to grow, which I think is like actually really powerful for this moment for us, right? So by leaving our Egypts, by leaving those narrow spaces and doing it in a really powerful way, we're giving space for rebirth, which is again such a huge part of the Passover, why we have Passover. I will share like this. These are just sort of an invitation. If you are like, Jewish folk tradition is my jam, yes, I really want to like dig into this. These are sort of like 2.0 version of the ritual. Salt, right? We use salt in Jewish tradition, first of all, for making our meat kosher, right? Salt is what draws the blood out of the meat. That's why by kosher meat is often extremely flavorful, because it's very salty. But salt is also used in Jewish tradition for other forms of purification and cleansing. Other cultures use it as well. You can sprinkle just a little bit of salt on your doorstep. If you're worried about tracking salt all over your house, which is a legitimate concern, you could just take a few small bowls or ramekins and put a little salt in there around your home. You can always drop some essential oil on it and really have it have a nice smell in that area too, that feels really fresh and clean. There's a tradition around garlic, and we actually have a clip on the site, I'll find it in a minute, about putting garlic on the Cedar plate from Dory Midnight. And so you may, and it was a custom that some people wore, like a garland of garlic during the regular day. I know, like in our American culture, we think about vampires with this, but there are Jewish customs behind it too. So maybe take a bulb or a whole head of garlic, or a clove of garlic, and just tuck it into your shirt, into your pockets, right? And think about how that garlic, with it's so strong to help us sort of, it wakes us up and it enlivens us. So how can you think about bringing that into the ritual? And then the last one is cedar, which is usually, it comes as like a resin that you can find, but it's a little less readily available than salt and garlic. I know most folks have those things, but cedar is another element that's been used for purification and cleansing. Oh, hold on. There we go. Thanks. Nope. Oop. Okay, I'm gonna mute somebody again. Yes, we got it. Cool. So I like the idea of, one of the things that we really believe in at Haggadot.com is the idea that rituals are really rooted in intention, attention, and repetition. So we've talked a lot about intention in this presentation, and about giving something our full attention. So I think with repetition, a way to do that is to come back to this practice during Passover. Does your space feel different, right? Go back to that chair in the new place, or go back to that room where you don't sit often. And take a moment and reflect if the space physically feels different. Do you feel different, right? I think, this is such a powerful kind of a thing. We've burned paper, we've dissolved paper. How are we now going to bring that? And does our energy feel different, right? Does our luck feel changed? And you can do that during Passover. Also, the second day of Passover is the start of Omer, which is another really powerful ritual time in our calendar. And so it's another opportunity to keep sort of checking in on this throughout Omer. We'll be sharing on the site a few Omer rituals as well as we get closer to the start of Passover. I also really liked this idea of, like, in liberated spaces, we're all working to restore whatever has been broken, right? In a very sort of tikkun olam, right? This repairing of the world kind of a way. And I think that, these are some rituals and some reflection questions that you can think about as you're doing this during Passover. We've left our narrow spaces, but what's felt broken in the past year? My guess is it's probably a lot of things. And maybe your priorities have changed in the last year, right? Maybe, all this time with family has really shifted how you feel about them, or maybe you've been separated for your family and you want so much, to reconnect and to repair those relationships that have been forced to be distanced. And I think to take time to think about what you'll restore, whether personally or more community-wide or globally, to think about what is it that you want to work at restoring between now and next Passover. And that's sort of, the invitation for going forward. Just a few resources to share here before we open it up for any kind of questions and brainstorming. As always, the haggadot.com website. We have our Seder Planners Facebook group and our regular Facebook page. There's a few books that have been really helpful for us in designing all of these webinars and really guiding our work, including The Art of Gathering by Priya Parker and The Power of Ritual by Casper ter Kuile. And I know Eileen shared the link, but if you're interested in the Passover meditation guide from Alison Lecter, this is where you can find it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and yeah, open it up if people have questions, reflections. I'm happy to talk with people about that.
And while we're here, feel free to ask us any of your Passover questions.
Yeah, also that. Yes, we'll share a recording with everyone who's registered. So as long as you got the other emails about the reminders for today, you'll get the email with the recording. And also we share all of our recordings on our blog. So I'll put that in the chat as well, in case you're looking for past recordings. You can find them all there.
Well, I'm curious, how is everybody planning on observing Passover this year? Are we doing hybrid Seders, Zoom Seders again? Okay, another Zoom Seder from Sandy. Great.
Oh, mixing up the Haggadot. I love that.
Yeah, so I have some that, like, I have some of the coloring pieces and some of the story pieces that I pulled from different ones because, well, I don't want the whole service to go too long, but I also, like, I want to have all the important things. And so I just kind of picked and did picking and choosing.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's great. I saw one that somebody, another Sandy is having an in-person Seder with a vaccinated group. That's wonderful. I think there's going to be a lot of that. Joining the Den from DC on the first day, great. Is anyone exploring a brunch Seder? Because Eileen and I have been very excited about the brunch Seders this year. If anyone is experimenting there. Seder from bed, similar vein, love it. I think Eileen's been talking about that too.
Yep.
How are you going to balance? Here's my question for the Seder in bed folks. What about matzah?
Oh, you have a tray. You know, you
okay.
You put it. You're going to use a tablecloth and some trays and like some steady boards so that things aren't going to shake. And I think I might put my glass of wine on the nightstand.
Smart.
Yeah,
I like it. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we share all the important hacks for a successful bed Seder.
Yeah, use a tablecloth. Like we're
right. Lauren also says tablecloth. Okay, fair. I'm like envisioning just matzah crumbs like glitter. I think matzah crumbs are the glitter of Jewish food. I'm seeing a Zoom Seder with family and friends, and then teaching Passover to religious school students in the 4th grade. Great. Are there folks having like questions about sort of like troubleshooting for their Seders? Ooh, backyard Afikoman hunt. 4 p.m. I think the afternoon evening Seders are going to be pretty popular this year. Improvised foods. We'll be sharing something this week about improvised Seder plates. Let me see if I can find that garlic piece. Oh, wow. Sandy, that sounds like a good prize. I'm like an Amazon prize for this Zoom, for the Afikoman scavenger hunt. I think Afikoman is going to be a very popular part of the Seder this year again, because it's fun and it's active and we can really, really dig into it.
Because we did it last year on the Zoom Seder, they didn't do anything for the Afikomen because nobody could figure out what to do. There's nobody who has any kids in their own home, so everybody's grown. So
I'll share. We did a blog post about how to find the Afikomen on Zoom. Let me see if I can dig that up.
Thank you, Lauren, for your kind words. It's so great to just see all of everybody's ideas coming together and all the sharing that's happening.
Yeah.
One of my friends had a Zoom Passover Seder last year, and their great grandmother has a family heirloom brooch. And what they did was somebody wore the brooch, but they didn't wear it obvious, like on their collar. They wore it on their shoulder or something. And as the Seder went on and people were moving around and stuff on camera, you had to find the brooch, and that was their Afikomen.
Interesting. I like that. I think there's definitely, ways to get creative with it. I just shared in the chat a blog post that we've recently updated about finding the Afikomen on Zoom. I'm also sharing, Shelley had a question about, is this Seder the same as last year? I think no, because I think, frankly, we're not the same people we were a year ago. And so we did a webinar at the very beginning, and we know a lot more now, right? We did a webinar a few weeks ago about what it means to host a Seder in 2021. So I shared the recording there. I agree that the next year in person wish, I'm hoping it actually does come true for most of us in 2022. I know a few of us get that in 2021. My friends, we're exploring like a few small pods and then and then Zooming those pods together. A temple Zoom, I think a big Zoom is more of a challenge than a family Zoom for any kind of gathering, especially a Seder.
Great. I think we're going to make this one a shorter webinar unless we have any other questions. Rebecca and I were on a webinar last night that was fantastic, and we'll be sending the link to that out in our newsletter, but it was 2 hours. So not every webinar needs to be super long. Oh, quick question. How to welcome others who are not your family into your Zoom Seder and make them feel welcome. So I would recommend some icebreakers. I think also this is a time where giving everybody something that they can share. Rebecca had a great idea. I think when we have a webinar that's about generally sharing our, how we're going to do our 2021 Seders. And she had a great idea of just like everybody can bring an object that you would add to the Seder plate this year, or something of personal meaning. I think also opening with like a meditation or like an opening breath or a song, like things that help the group feel a little bit of cohesion. Those are also great. We can, you could also go just searching on the site for like icebreakers or introductions. And there's a lot of great ways for like framing the Seder for your guests.
Someone had a really fun idea last night where, and this is great with teens as well, is that she assigned sections of the Seder to different people. And I think that's another way that you can do that. If you've got people who aren't your family, I think it's easier if they've been to a Seder before. I would say they're not Jewish, it's okay, but maybe make sure that these are our Seder veterans, to invite them to make something their own, right? So like, we'd love for you to be the Dayenu person, and you're going to kind of, make that section your own, and to have, and because Dayenu is about gratitude and you can really take the lead on that piece. I think it's a good segue, Lauren, that yes, grateful for another year with the mute button. It does make some family members easier to talk to. Prayers in many languages, great. Yeah, so I think you can do that. That's funny, it's Sandy.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, tease your guests about going through the whole book. Yeah, no, I mean, there's so much. And even on our site, we offer a lot of compilations of the, curations of our favorite content. And we've started to tell people, like, we don't intend for you to go through, everything on our site that we've curated for you. Like, this is just to give you a taste. Yeah, but sometimes also managing the expectations of your guests, saying like, this is going to last a couple hours, or, we're going to do some rituals together for an hour and then we'll do some chatting. And if you want to follow up for the second part with us, you can stay, but you don't have to. I think what's interesting about right now is that, even though it's our second time doing these Zoom Seders, it's still like a little bit uncomfortable, or it's like, it's out of our comfort zones, right? These like, it's not like somebody's going to walk into the same family Seder that you've had for 30 years and they're not going to get all the customs. Like, everyone's a little bit stepping outside their norms here. So I think that'll make it a little bit easier too.
Yeah. Great.
Great. So one thing that I just want to share before we close, as Rebecca mentioned in the beginning, we are entirely funded by our users. So basically, it's really important for us to provide our content for free, because I think that, access to meaningful Jewish and in general spiritual content is just a public good. And sometimes you have the money to pay for it, sometimes you don't. And so if you have a little bit of extra money this year and you can donate, we appreciate it so much. It really helps us. We actually have a team of about 10 people working on our site right now this time of year. It takes a lot of work to make it happen. And yeah, so Rebecca shared the link there. And look, and if not, we're still so happy to have you as a part of our community. And we're just really excited to see everyone here and see you grow. See us all grow. So thanks so much. So since you've signed up, you're on our newsletter now, and so you're going to get the information from this session. You're going to get a couple other helpful updates to help you get through this Passover season. And then, we do check email and all the questions on the site. So if you have questions as you're working on things, please do reach out. We try to get back to everybody within 24 hours. And as we get closer to Seder, within a few hours, we respond. So it's just great to have you here. So thank you. And so Rebecca and I have a closing ritual. Do you want to lead it, Rebecca?
Sure. So yes, this is very silly but fun ritual. We invite everybody. I know a lot of folks aren't on camera, but you can do it if you don't have to come onto camera if you don't want to, but you can put your hands in the middle. This is sort of like a high school sports team. And we are going to count to 3, and then we're going to lift up our hands and yell Seder. Okay. Some of you are veterans of our webinar, so you're familiar with this. Others are new and are kind of like, this is fun. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3, Seder.
Seder.
Thanks, everybody. Happy Passover.
Thank you so much.